Welcome everyone to the next exercise, this time on assigning surgeries to operating rooms. We are surgery planner and we have to decide which of the physical surgeries to assign to which of 4 operating rooms. The physical surgery has for today 4 operating rooms available, and each of these rooms has a capacity of 14 hours, okay? And we know that the patients arrive one by one. So we are basically in an online setting here, and after the patient was treated and examined, we know at least the expected duration time of the surgery. So the first patient needs 4 hours, the second 3 hours, and so on. Okay, and here a bit of visualization. So we have 4 operating rooms for today, and each of these operating rooms has 14 hours capacity. Okay, and now as a planner we have to decide which patient to assign to which operating room. Okay, so let's start with the first task. We have to derive a lower bound for the required numbers of operating rooms, assuming we want to treat all patients on one day. We didn't have that in our lecture, but this is simply logical thinking. Okay, so let's keep the notation from the lecture. So patient is notated by index I, and the duration of each patient is denoted by AI. And we also know that the overall capacity for each operating room is 14 hours. Okay, so if we want to determine the lower bound, then obviously we have to sum the durations over all patients, over all eyes, and simply divide it by the overall capacity for each operating room. Okay, and that would give us, so if we sum all the durations, we would here get 53 hours divided by 14 hours. Okay, and this would give us a 3.79. So because we cannot have continuous number of operating rooms, we need an integer, and this is why we use the ceiling function, where we have to round up the number to the next integer, which would be in our case 4. Okay, so we would need at least 4 operating rooms if we want to treat all patients on one day. Okay, and we have 4 operating rooms. Okay, let's see if we can use them. So, okay, it's nicely written again, and then going to B. So in B we have to explain first of all the next fit heuristic, and then assign the patients to the ORs using this heuristic. Okay, and what we have to keep in mind is, if we cannot assign all patients to one of these operating rooms, then the patients have to stay overnight, and their surgeries have to be delayed. Okay, and we want to know now how many patients have to stay overnight. So first part of the exercise is to explain next fit. We know from the lecture that first of all, one operating room is active, is open. If surgery I fits, or if patient I fits into this active operating room because it has enough capacity, then assign it to this operating room. Otherwise, if we don't have enough capacity available anymore, then close this operating room and open a new one. Okay, pretty straightforward. So the second part of this task is to assign the patients using the next fit heuristic. Okay, so let's start. What we have is that we know we have 14 hours available overall for each. So this is an U, R, and S. So hours, that should be hours for every operating room. And now we know the first one is coming. So these 14 hours minus the first patient. So the first patient has a duration of 4 hours. That means we have 4 hours. And that would mean we have 10 hours left. Okay, so 10 hours is fine. We can also take the second patient. Okay, that would mean 10 hours is left minus 3 hours for the second patient, and we still have 7 hours left of capacity. So that means we can also use the third patient and assign him to the first operating room. So 7 hours minus again 3 hours, and this would give us 4 hours that are left in this operating room. So we can assign a patient that has still 4 hours left. Unfortunately, the fourth patient requires 5 hours. So that means we cannot assign him to the first operating room. Okay, so these patients have been assigned to the first room, but 5 hours is too much, so we cannot assign this patient to the first operating room. So this is closed now, and we have to open a second room. Okay, and the same. So now 14 hours minus the fourth patient, which takes 5 hours, so we have 9 hours left. Okay, then the next one, we can take the next patient because the duration is only 3 hours, so we are left with 6 hours. And the next patient is only requires 2 hours. Fine, we can assign him to the second operating room, and we have still 4 hours available. Okay, can I use another? Sorry. I just wanted to check if I can use another color. I think. Okay. No. So we left with. Okay. Wait. So the first operating room was closed. We left with 4 hours. Okay. The second one, we had also 4 hours. So these patients were assigned to the first one. The fourth, fifth, and sixth patient, they were assigned to the second one. So, and we again have still a capacity of 4 hours. So the seventh, we cannot assign to the second operating room because we don't have enough available capacity. So okay, we have to close the second room too. Okay, and then we start with a third operating room. So again, 14 hours minus, so we can now assign the seventh patient, and 14 minus 5 hours, we have 9 hours left. We can also assign the eighth patient with 4 hours of treating time or surgery time, so we are left with 5 hours, and we can still assign the ninth patient, and we still have 4 hours left. However, the next patient requires a surgery which would take 6 hours. We cannot assign him to the third operating room. Okay, so again we have to close the next one and open the fourth operating room. Okay, we start with a 10th patient who requires 6 hours of surgery time, and 14 minus 6, we have 8 hours left. And then we can still assign the 11th patient with 5 hours, and we have still capacity of 3 hours. Okay. The next one, unfortunately, requires 4 hours, so that means it doesn't fit into the fourth operating room anymore. We have to close it, and now we have to open the operating room 1 again on the next day. Okay, so the remaining patients have to wait till, let's say, if the first one was on Monday, so they have to wait till Tuesday to the next day. Okay, then we have to assign, has again 14 hours of capacity. So we assign the 12th patient with 4 hours, so 14 minus 4 hours, so we still have 10 hours left, minus the 13th patient, 10 hours minus 2 hours, 8 hours left, minus the 14th patient, which requires 4 hours, so that's fine. We still have 4 hours left, and we can even assign the last patient who requires 2 hours of surgery time, so we are left with 2 hours. Okay, so these are the patients who are assigned to the next day. Okay, so that means we have patients 12 till the last patient, so in total 4 patients. They have to stay overnight because sorry for my handwriting, because all operating rooms are blocked due to the next fit heuristic, and 4 patients, the surgeries of 4 patients have to be delayed to the next day. And you can see here that you have 5 operating rooms, and with each of them you still have some idle times. So you are not using operating room for 4 hours on the first day, 4 hours operating room 2 is idling. We have 4 hours also in operating room 3, and we have 3 and even 2 idle time operating room 1 on the next day. So that cannot be the best solution. Okay, on one hand we have to operate on an additional day, we have blocked every operating room, and we still have idle times. Okay, therefore we start now. So this is how it looks more prettier, okay, than my handwriting. And here we start with a best fit heuristic and to see if this could lead to an improved solution. Okay, so the question is, how does the situation change? How many patients do have to stay overnight? Okay, so best fit, just remember, a new surgery is assigned to an operating room which has the least remaining capacity after the assignment. Okay, so we want to have operating rooms that are pretty full packed. Okay, so we have the minimum of capacity available after the assignment. Okay, so let's check how this works. So we have again 14 hours overall for each of the operating rooms. So let's start with the first patient. Okay, so that would give us 10 hours that still can be used. Okay, so the second is also fine. Okay, we have 7 hours left. We can also use the third patient. Still have 4 hours left. Okay, and now the fourth patient requires, first of all, we could assign these to the first operating room, and the fourth patient requires 5 hours, so it doesn't fit into the operating room anymore. Therefore, we place it, we assign this patient to the second operating room. So 14 hours minus 5 hours surgery duration leads to 9 hours. Okay, so the fifth one could be assigned to the second operating room. And then the fifth one requires 3 hours. And we said that we would like to assign it to this operating room, which has the least remaining capacity at the end of the assignment. So if we would place the 3 hours to the operating room, we would end up with 6 hours left. If we would assign it to the first operating room, we would just left with 1 hour of capacity. And this is what we want. So that means we now assign the fifth patient to the first operating room, and we are left with only 1 hour capacity here. Okay, so the third one was again assigned to the first operating room. Okay, so the sixth one patient, he requires a surgery of 2 hours. It doesn't fit to the operating room anymore. Therefore, we assign him to the second one. Okay, so we are left with 7 hours. And then the next one can also be used. We are left with 2 hours. Okay, so that means 6 and 7 could also be assigned to the second one. And then we have the 8th patient requires 4 hours. So that doesn't fit into the operating room 2 anymore. So we are using the third one. So we assign him to the third operating room. 14 hours minus 4 is 10 hours that are left. Okay, so that one can be assigned to the operating 3. And then we have one patient that only requires 1 hour. And we see in the operating room we exactly have 1 hour of capacity left. So we are using this and assigning him to the first operating room. Okay, and now we have 0 capacity left. So the operating room is to 100% filled and packed. So we have a 100% utilization for operating room. No idle times. Okay, for operating room. So to 100% it's packed. Okay, the 10th patient can be again assigned because of duration of 6 hours. We have to assign him to the third operating room, and that means 4 hours left. Okay, so both of them, this 10th, okay, so the 10th patient is also assigned to the third operating room. Okay, so the 11th one requires 5 hours, so it cannot be assigned to the operating 2, neither to operating 3, because we don't have enough capacity, and therefore we can still open the fourth room. Okay, so this is the 11th patient, and 14 minus 5, we have 9 hours left of capacity. Okay, so the 11th one was assigned to the last operating room. Okay, and the next one, so the 12th patient requires 4 hours. So we could only assign him to the operating room 3 and 4, but we would like to minimize the capacity that is left after the assignment, and therefore we can only assign it to operating room 3, which is 12. So the 12th patient, and that means we have 0 capacity left anymore, and again we have a utilization on 100% of operating room 3. Okay, so the next one requires, let's see, so this is assigned to the third operating room. Okay, patient number 13 requires 2 hours, and we see that operating 2 has exactly 2 hours of capacity left, and this is why we assign this patient to the second, let's see if you can still read it, so to the second operating room. Okay, so this is the 13th one. And also here we have 100% utilization, no idle times at all. Okay, and that means operating room 1, 2, and 3 are fully packed. That means we only have operating 4 available. Okay, here we can assign the 14th patient, and we are left with 5 hours of operating time. And the last patient can also be assigned to the last operating room, and we have a rest capacity of 3 hours, which means we have idle time of 3 hours. So that means no patient has to wait for the next day. No one has to stay overnight, and we could decrease the number of idle times also. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.